Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world with me, Deepika, coming up in the next 1 hour. Calling for independence on semiconductors and pharmaceuticals national security risk, US President Donald Trump pushes forward with plans to impose new tariffs on their imports. Meta's Mark Zuckerberg testifies in landmark US antitrust trial over Instagram and WhatsApp ownership as US government claims Meta holds monopoly on platforms. US President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff says Russian President Putin open to permanent peace deal with Ukraine. And Indian indices opens on positive note. Asian markets too rally amid Donald Trump's temporary tariff reprieve. Good afternoon to all our viewers joining us at this afternoon broadcast DD India News Hour. To begin with the latest that we are tracking for you. Well, Meta platform CEO Mark Zuckerberg took the stand on Monday at a high-stakes trial in Washington over US's antitrust enforcers' claim that the company spent billions of dollars to acquire Instagram and WhatsApp to fend off Facebook competitors. The looming antitrust trial will be the first big test of President Donald Trump's Federal Trade Commission's ability to challenge big tech. Now, Zuckerberg responded to the questions while seeking to combat allegations Meta bought the companies a decade ago to eliminate competition among social media platforms where users connect with friends and family. The FTC has pointed to emails in which Zuckerberg proposed acquiring photo-sharing app Instagram as a way to neutralize a potential Facebook competitor and expressed worry that encrypted messaging service WhatsApp could grow into a social network. The trial could stretch into July. If the FTC wins, it would have to separately prove that measures such as forcing Meta to sell Instagram or WhatsApp would restore competition. Well, Meta will train its artificial intelligence models with its European users' public content and conversations with the Meta AI chatbot. The decision represents a major volte-face from the Facebook and Instagram owner that has previously appeared wary of the European Union's stringent regulations on the use of personal data. According to the social networking giant, people based in the European Union who use Meta platforms can opt out of having their data used for generative AI training purposes. Now, that means everything from Instagram photo captions to Facebook comments could soon be fair game for Meta AI, which Mark Zuckerberg-owned company hopes will overtake market leader ChatGPT. Meanwhile, Japanese authorities on Tuesday said they had issued a cease and desist order to US tech titan Google over an alleged violation of national antitrust laws. Well, it is the first time the country has issued such an order to a global technology giant, Japanese media reported, and follows similar moves in Europe and the United States. Japan's Fair Trade Commission, or the FTC, said the problem is related to the implementation of search functions for Android smartphones in violation of the antitrust law. The Trade Commission accuses Google of imposing binding conditions on Android smartphone manufacturers in Japan since at least July 2020. Specifically, it says Google made sure its online app store, Google Play, would be installed as part of a package with its web browser search app, Chrome. And to give you a rounded perspective on this, we are joined by our guest of the day, Professor Swaran Singh from School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, JNU. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for joining us at this afternoon broadcast and speaking on this important topic. Now, talking about it, Trump's big tech saga continues in its second term, and this time it is a big blow to Zuckerberg's Meta, sending tremors to the tech industry as well. But at the same time, it is also in line with the intention to break a monopoly. First of all, we would like to understand that how is this a monopoly and crossing all the lines of a fair industry, if at all that is the case, Professor Singh?
Thank you. First of all, in free trade practices, which is usually celebrated, protected, and regulated in most Western liberal societies. Monopoly is something which is not acceptable, and therefore monopolies must not be allowed to be built or to be created in whatsoever manner, directly or indirectly. That's why so much focus on antitrust, focus on ensuring good regulation so that consumers are always able to have their choices. In this case, about 20 years back, when Meta of today was created as Facebook, from inception itself, it has had successive episodes of concerns being issued, the concerns being debated about its practices being a matter of concern. There are commercial films made, there are documentaries and media reports, and so on. Similarly, the background of President Trump also is equally interesting in terms of the way he functions as a president. During his first term, also he had issues with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and his team. And the third element, I think, other than the Federal Trade Commission pursuing this antitrust law-driven suit against acquisition of Instagram and WhatsApp by Facebook to fundamentally eliminate any competition in personal social networking. What is equally interesting is that this goes beyond just matter of commercial concerns. There was a biographical work published by one of the former employees of Meta, Sarah Wine Williams. She published her memoirs called Careless People, which has highlighted even the security concerns, saying that from 2015, Mark Zuckerberg and his team was building a very close relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, and in that sense, enabling them, empowering them to kind of outcompete American companies on one side, and on other side also create very specific kind of control mechanisms, control tools, particularly for Meta platforms to be used in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, where the fundamental value of liberal American society of ensuring free speech was being kind of undermined by Meta company itself when it operates in some of these areas like Hong Kong and Taiwan and even in China. So that whistleblowers link with China and link with national security being undermined by Mark Zuckerberg and his team has, I think, made this lawsuit much more critical and much more sort of concern to common citizens in the United States and to the government. And of course, we know the way President Trump takes on these issues, starting from his election. He had been talking of, sort of taking on these big tech companies, and some of them were already, sort of gearing up by ensuring that they are able to placate the White House, either in terms of, for example, doing away with diversity-based hiring, or sort of all other manners of ensuring that the White House feels that they are in compliance with what President Trump wants the big corporations to do. Nevertheless, despite personal meetings, despite being in attendance at various places during President Trump's inaugural, it seems that once again, it's not first time, once again, Meta company and Mark Zuckerberg personally have come in the eye of storm in that sense. And I think coming weeks will continue to keep media's focus glued on what happens to this company, whether it is finally forced to split. And the last story was about 40 years back. I think it was AT&T which faced similar situation. But then once that kind of outcome, if that happens, would be a kind of very clear signal to several other mega tech companies as well. And I'm sure all of them are also very carefully watching each of the events, each part of the process of this lawsuit, which is happening right now by the Federal Trade Commission versus the Meta at this stage.
And taking that point forward, we would really like to know that how are the rest of the industry, the tech industry specifically, receiving this move, as which you just mentioned, because social media platforms are also, directly related to an individual's security in terms of personal details, and hence linked to safety measures as well. And this goes on a mass platform.
Indeed, the other big story that your media has followed and told your viewers so much about is what happened to TikTok, for example. TikTok was virtually banned in United States, and then of course President Trump came and he's trying to facilitate whether TikTok can be bought by his very dear friend Elon Musk. That process is still in deep freezer, not very clear what happens to that. And in that sense, I think the other person who is very close, Elon Musk is very close, but we have noticed that on issue of tariff hikes, for example, there has been a clear and sharp divergence between Peter Navarro, who's President Trump's trade advisor, international trade advisor, and the views of Elon Musk of another very powerful social media platform, which is X. Of course, other big tech companies would be interesting to see what happens to them. But I think most important would be whether that also means something for X to also come under scanner of some kind, because Elon Musk's views on tariffs could trigger some kind of sharp response from White House in that sense, and whether that is another comparable personal social networking platform, whether that is also coming under scanner or not, could be another example that media will have to keep an eye on.
And also, it is not only about Meta. Later this month, which is on the 21st of April, the Justice Department will argue that Google should be forced to sell its Chrome browser to limit its dominance in search as well. Will this also allow new competitors to find their voice across one of the most rich industries? Do you think so?
It does provide a certain space to smaller and upcoming startups to fill some of those spaces, particularly when mega companies are under scanner, under certain stress. But as we have seen, the track record of last 3 decades has been that these virtual monopolies or oligopolies, if you don't want to call them monopolies, invariably have been able to wipe out any competition and buy out any startup that seems to potentially compete with them and challenge them. So I would say the history in this case has not been very encouraging of seeing that a real free market will be created on the ground where consumer has multiple choices to take on. And of course, consumer in last 20-30 years has become the product himself or herself. And very often consumer is completely kept in the dark as to how his data, his pictures, his other information is being utilized by companies that are apparently providing kind of free platforms to them to engage and connect with each other around the world. I believe about half of advertising now for Meta happens only on Instagram, about $1 billion plus per year, I think. And that shows how much of advertising is also shifting to these kind of social media platforms, which are becoming the main connect with the most consumers, and also the way they operate algorithms in further constraining your choices as a consumer and pushing you in certain directions to make choices. Those are also, I think, matters of concern. But at this stage, I think we are only talking of the bigger issues of a particular company buying out all competition. And I think the concerns of consumers and how they are being kept in dark and whether they are on the losing side could also be a matter of concern, which perhaps potentially could come out also for some investigation in future.
And politically talking about it, this also speaks volumes about Trump's move against big tech. But how well is it going to go down with both the Republicans and the Democrats? What do you think?
I think Trump's audacity to use a word that President Obama used to use very often is unmatchable. The way he's been able to do things, for example, 145% tariffs against China, or putting tariffs against all 86 trading partner countries in a staggered fashion, raising them, shows that he is quite capable of pushing the envelope quite too far. But as we have again noticed in the big issue of tariff hikes, there are pulls and pressures that also begin to show. And the way the consumer on the ground becomes anxious, also reflected in how political parties and the bigger voices in those political parties begin to indicate need for restraint. So ultimately, if you look at how for last 300 to 400 years of liberal democracy and free market economies have worked, the big houses have invariably been in a close connect with the major political parties and have had certain amount of influence in policy making and implementation. And in case of United States, and particularly in case of big tech companies, I think last 30 years record is very clear that they wield enormous influence in United States politics, and of course they wield enormous tools that common people don't even know are being
Right.
unleashed on them, and that I think that is
Right.
something which should be matter of concern as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Singh, for joining us and bringing us a rounded perspective on this very important global pressing issue. Thank you. Time to take a quick and short break, but still to come on the other side. Russia's air defense units destroy 115 Ukrainian drones overnight. US federal judge blocks Trump from revoking legal status for some 500,000 immigrants. And Chinese President Xi meets Vietnamese President Wang in Hanoi. Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India News Hour. To continue with more news and updates, now let's talk about US President Donald Trump, who has once again blamed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for the conflict and accused him of responsibility for millions of deaths. During a meeting in the Oval Office with the president of El Salvador, Trump placed blame of the Russia-Ukraine conflict not just on Russian President Vladimir Putin, but also on former US President Joe Biden and Zelensky himself. He also claimed the Ukrainian leader is constantly seeking to purchase US missiles, adding that he expects some good proposals on ending the conflict soon.
War that should have never been allowed to start, and Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame. Going to purchase missiles, you know. He's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size, and then hope that people give you some missiles. All I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
Now, Ukrainian forces has hit Russia's Kursk region with dozens of drones, killing an elderly woman and injuring 9 people. The Russian Defense Ministry said that 109 drones were downed over the Kursk region overnight. A multi-story apartment building was damaged in result of the drone attack, with several flats catching fire. Kursk and other Russian regions on the border with Ukraine have been facing frequent air and land attack by Kyiv forces. Authorities had issued a missile and drone attack alert and asked the residents to move away from windows. The assault came as the residents of the Ukrainian city of Sumy grieved the victims of one of the deadliest Russian attacks of the war. And Russian President Vladimir Putin is open to a permanent peace deal with Ukraine, according to a top US envoy, signaling a potential breakthrough in the conflict that has lasted more than 3 years. In a televised interview on Monday, US envoy Steve Witkoff said he envisions a peace agreement taking shape. He also said that 2 of Putin's senior advisors participated in what he described as a compelling meeting that included discussions on US-Russia business ties. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that it was not easy to agree with the United States on the key parts of a possible peace deal to end the war in Ukraine, and that Russia would never again allow itself to depend economically on the West. US President Donald Trump, who says he wants to be remembered as a peacemaker, has repeatedly said he wants to end the bloodbath of the 3-year conflict in Ukraine, though a deal is yet to be agreed. The Kremlin on Sunday said that it was too early to expect results from the restoration of more normal relations with Washington. Lavrov said that Russia's position had been set out clearly by President Vladimir Putin in June 2024, when Putin demanded Ukraine must officially drop its NATO ambitions and withdraw its troops from the entirety of the territory of 4 Ukrainian regions claimed by Russia. And Akshay Dungre joins us with more. Good afternoon, Akshay. Now, there's been a lot of friction in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the US is also keen to play a big role in this. Earlier, we heard Zelensky invited Donald Trump to visit Ukraine and take a stock of devastation. And on the other hand, US's Witkoff says Russia is open to a peace deal. Considering the global market scenario as well, take us through the significance of this latest development, Akshay.
Well, as far as the relevance of these developments that have taken place in Europe are concerned, then we can clearly see that the situation is not going the way it was expected to when US intervened under the Trump administration and tried to broker a peace deal or a ceasefire between the two warring factions. However, what we are seeing right now is an intensity of attacks against each other are increasing. Ukraine has been consistently trying and procuring new weapons as far as this war is concerned. But one thing is absolutely clear once again by the Trump administration, that as Donald Trump has said, that you cannot fight an enemy 20 times your size at the weapons at the expense of others when it comes to weapons, and at a hope that others will be providing for arms and ammunition for your fight for you to win. So that clearly states that the US is not in fact going to is willing to play a major role as far as being an arms exporter to Ukraine is concerned. That was the past. That was under the Biden administration, where Ukraine has been getting most of its arms and ammunition along with funding. However, what we are seeing at this point in time is also that both the warring factions are not an equal footing. Clearly, Russia's arms manufacturing industry has strengthened. In fact, since the war has started, they are procuring more weapons, they are producing more missiles, more tanks, and more other kind of arms and ammunition as far as the war is concerned. However, Ukraine has been devastated, and Donald Trump is right about one thing, that many people have died, and it could have been prevented as far as the needless bloodshed is concerned. So clearly, while we are not looking at any kind of hope that there will be a peace deal that will be acceptable to both Putin and Zelensky, but US is still pushing forward with it. Witkoff has said that Russia is open to peace, but clearly the attitude that we have been seeing as far as the Ukrainian leadership is concerned, that remains the same, that they would want to fight till the end, or the devastation that has happened in Ukraine must be avenged. And that is what the Trump administration is saying, that you cannot actually possibly expect to fight with a country that not only has much larger area, much larger defense sector, but also has the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons. If Russia wants to end Ukraine, this war, or perhaps cause more devastation, then it honestly has more arms and ammunition. The only pressure that Russia faces is that any kind of attack against Ukraine may attract a retaliation from its European allies, and perhaps that's the reason why the war is not escalating. But it's also not dying down, and that is a worry for the US administration as well as the entire world.
All right. Thank you so much, Akshay, for joining us and bringing us the latest on this. Well, the US is turning up the heat in its trade war, and this time targeting two of the world's most crucial sectors, which are pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. President Donald Trump is pushing forward with plans to slap new tariffs on imported medicine and chips, calling foreign dependence a national security risk. Here's more.
Donald Trump's tariff saga refuses to cease. The roller coaster ride has already got the global markets facing headwinds. Now the national security probes have been initiated on two products, pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. The probes are a precursor for imposing tariffs on chips and drugs. Trump says he expects to impose tariffs on imported pharmaceuticals in the not too distant future.
We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come.
The Commerce Department has launched formal probes into both sectors. Commerce Secretary insists the move will bring manufacturing back home.
We need to have semiconductors, we need to have chips, and we need to have flat panels. We need to have these things made in America. We can't be reliant on Southeast Asia for all of the things that operate for us. So what he's doing is he's saying they're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two. So these are coming soon. You shouldn't think this is really outside of it. Really think of it as being included in the semiconductor space, much like pharmaceuticals.
But the move is already raising red flags. Drug makers warn it could lead to shortages and make medicines more expensive. Chip makers say that tariffs could disrupt production just as the world is racing to meet the tech demand. Markets had a mixed reaction to the development. Wall Street saw a modest rebound, with investors clinging to hopes that exemptions for some tech goods like smartphones and computers might soften the blow. But Trump has signaled those exemptions won't last forever. Meanwhile, efforts to strike trade deals with many partners are also gathering pace. Treasury Secretary Stock Bessent has hinted momentum in talks with individual countries on reaching trade deals but offered little details. Talks have begun with Vietnam and were to start with Japan on Wednesday, then South Korea next week. These nations on their part have started their own efforts to counter the effects. The timeline or chances of any deal with China remains a question mark. Meanwhile, Taiwan's economy minister said on Tuesday that the island will simulate the impact of any US tariffs on the semiconductor industry. South Korea, which is home to chip giants like Samsung, announced an emergency $4.9 billion boost for its semiconductor industry to counter the fallout. South Korea's finance minister also said on Tuesday that Seoul will try to delay reciprocal tariffs as much as possible by negotiations with the United States. Back in America, a legal advocacy group on Monday asked the US Court of International Trade to block Trump's sweeping tariffs on foreign trading partners, arguing the president overstepped his authority. The lawsuit asks the court to block enforcement of the tariffs and declare Trump lacked the authority to impose them. The New York-based Court of International Trade is a US federal court with broad jurisdiction over most trade-related matters. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, the American technology giant AMD announced on Tuesday that the company is all set to begin chip production at Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company's new Arizona facility, marking a significant step in expanding US-based AI server manufacturing. Speaking in Taipei, AMD CEO Lisa Su emphasized the company's readiness despite ongoing global supply chain challenges, noting that a strong network of partnerships help navigate these dynamics effectively.
Well, I think overall, we all see that it's a very dynamic situation right now in the overall supply chain. I think we're very lucky that we have a broad and a very deep set of partnerships. So we believe we can work very closely with our partners to manage any of the supply chain issues.
The U.S. Department of Education has frozen more than $2.3 billion in federal funding for Harvard University, just hours after the school rejected President Donald Trump's demands that it make deep policy changes on diversity. The move marks a new level of contentiousness between President Donald Trump's administration and American universities it accuses of being captured by the extreme left. Trump's administration has frozen hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding for numerous universities, pressing the institutions to make policy and other changes and citing what it says is a failure to fight anti-Semitism on campus. However, Harvard on Monday rejected Trump administration demands that to receive federal funding, it end diversity efforts and take other steps that the university said would stifle intellectual freedoms of faculty and students. And to ease any funding crunch created by any cutoff in federal funding, Harvard is working to borrow $750 million from Wall Street. Staying in the U.S., a federal judge blocked U.S. President Donald Trump's administration from quickly revoking the legal status of over 500,000 immigrants from Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua and Haiti. Now, this ruling comes in latest order against Trump's rapid push to carry out mass deportations. In the month of March, Trump's administration said it was moving to revoke the legal status of some 500,000 immigrants from Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans and Venezuelans who came to U.S. under a parole program. Now, this was initially launched by former President Joe Biden in October 2022. The parole program allowed the entry to U.S. for 2 years for up to 30,000 migrants per month from 4 countries which have grim human rights records. And President Donald Trump said he wants to deport some violent criminals who are U.S. citizens to El Salvador, where they would be incarcerated under an agreement with that country's government.
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand it. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it.
We're heading for a short break, but still to come on the other side. India's Hajj quota rises to 1.75 lakh in 2025. Niti Aayog says by 2030, India's automotive component production to cross $145 billion mark. And up next, we'll get to national weather updates pertaining to changing weather patterns across the country.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India News Hour. It's now time to get you all the latest on Israel and Gaza conflict. Now, Gaza peace talks mediator Egypt said it received an Israeli proposal for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza that would pave the way for negotiations towards a permanent ceasefire of hostilities. And in its proposal, Israel offered a ceasefire of at least 45 days in exchange for the release of half of the remaining hostages held in the Palestinian territory and the entry of aid. The proposal also includes the disarmament of Hamas and all Palestinian armed factions in the Gaza Strip as a condition for a permanent end to the conflict. Mediators Egypt and Qatar have presented the new Israeli proposal for a Gaza ceasefire to Hamas. Hamas leaders meanwhile said they were reviewing the ceasefire proposal and would respond as soon as the necessary internal consultations are completed. The groups informed the mediators that it is willing to agree to any proposal that includes a permanent ceasefire, a full Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip and the entry of aid as well. Hamas, however, had rejected any clauses that would see it forced to disarm. Hamas and the resistance faction's position is that the resistance weapons are a red line and non-negotiable. Meanwhile, Israel confirmed it had eliminated the head of a Hamas Nukba force terror cell, Hamza Wail Mohammed Asafa, in Hamas's Dar e Bala battalion 2 weeks ago. Israel Defense Forces said that Asafa participated in the 7th of October attack as well as a hostage release ceremony in the month of February. The U.S. State Department has approved the potential sale of ethane power pack engines and related equipments to Israel for an estimated cost of $180 million. The principal contractor for the sale will be Rolls-Royce Solution America. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency, in a statement, said the United States is committed to the security of Israel and it is vital to U.S. national interests to assist Israel to develop and maintain a strong and ready self-defense capability. The second round of talks between the United States and Iran on Tehran's nuclear program is expected to be held in Rome on Saturday. Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani announced that Rome has agreed to host the meeting following requests from the negotiating parties and Oman, which is acting as a mediator. Tajani announced during a visit to Japan. Now, the first round of indirect talks between the US and Iranian officials took place in Oman on the 12th of April. Both the countries have said that they had held positive and constructive talks, although the negotiations remain indirect, with Oman acting as a mediator. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will travel to Russia this week for consultations regarding the nuclear talks with the United States. Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed that Araghchi would meet his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, in Moscow. US President Donald Trump claimed on Monday that Iran has been intentionally delaying a nuclear deal with the United States. Well, Trump cautioned Tehran against a drive for a nuclear weapon, saying it may have to face a military strike if it did not desist from its activities. Now, Trump said that Iranians need to move fast to avoid a harsh response because they are fairly close to developing a nuclear weapon.
I want them to be a rich, great nation. The only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us, I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people.
Meanwhile, White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said on Monday that a diplomatic agreement with Iran will depend on working out details around verification of the country's uranium enrichment and weapons program. Now, Singapore's President Tharman Shanmugaratnam dissolved country's parliament on Tuesday, according to a government statement. Nomination day has been set for the 23rd of April and election will be held on the 3rd of May as announced by the Election Commission. The vote will be the first electoral test for Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, who succeeded long-time Premier Lee Hsien Loong as the leader of the People's Action Party in the year 2024 in the month of May. Vietnamese President Luong held a meeting with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on Xi's last day of a trip to Hanoi. China and Vietnam signed 45 documents and agreements aiming to boost ties between the two neighboring countries amid tariff tensions with the United States. After a 2-day stop in Hanoi, Xi will continue his Southeast Asian trip by visiting Malaysia and Cambodia from Tuesday till Friday. And now let's take a quick look at other stories making news around the world in brief. The death toll at last week's nightclub roof collapse in the capital of the Dominican Republic rose to 231. Families of victims began filing lawsuits against the nightclub's owner. Authorities have begun investigations to determine the causes of the collapse. The tragedy has cast a shadow over the Holy Week celebrations in the Caribbean nation, with multiple events and activities cancelled and beach parties now banned. Elephants at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park instinctively formed a protective circle around their young during a 5.2 magnitude earthquake that struck San Diego County on Monday, showcasing a natural behavior known as an alert circle intended to shield the most vulnerable members of the herd from perceived threats. A newly released video captures a merry moment of twin panda sisters in southwest China gazing curiously at the camera as if posing for a childhood selfie. The adorable siblings gaze curiously on camera, enjoying and cuddling. Moving on, the government of India has prioritized facilitating the Hajj pilgrimage for Indian Muslims, and as a result of sustained efforts, India's Hajj quota has now risen from 136,020 in 2014 to 175,025 in 2025, finalized by Saudi authorities annually. The Ministry of Minority Affairs, through the Hajj Committee of India, has completed necessary preparations including flights, transport, MENA camps, accommodations and services as per Saudi Arabian guidelines. The remaining quota has been allotted as customary to private tour operators. Over 800 operators have been consolidated into 26 combined Hajj group operators, with the quota distributed to them in advance. Prime Minister Narendra Modi underscored that bringing in the Waqf amendment was necessary for the protection of the rights of poor and tribals. Speaking at an event in Haryana, the Prime Minister noted that the vast tracts of land under Waqf meant to benefit the poor, destitute women and children were instead exploited by a handful of land mafias. He added that amendments to the Waqf Act will put an end to such exploitation, emphasizing a significant new provision in the amendment law, ensuring that tribal lands cannot be touched by Waqf boards. He stated that the new provisions will also honor the sanctity of Waqf.
वक्फ कानून में बदलाव के बाद अब ये गरीबों से जो लूटा जा रहा है वो बंद होने वाला है। और सबसे बड़ी बात, हमने एक बहुत बड़ा जिम्मेदारीपूर्ण महत्वपूर्ण काम किया है। हमने इस वक्फ कानून में एक और प्रावधान किया है। अब नए कानून के तहत, वक्फ के कानून के तहत, किसी भी आदिवासी की जमीन को हिंदुस्तान के किसी भी कोने में आदिवासी की जमीन को, उसके घर को, उसकी संपत्ति को ये वक्फ बोर्ड हाथ भी नहीं लगा पाएगा। ये आदिवासी के हितों की रक्षा करने का, संविधान की मर्यादाओं का पालन करने का हमने बहुत बड़ा काम किया है। नए प्रावधानों से वक्फ की भी पवित्र भावना का सम्मान होगा।
Addressing a press conference in Kerala, Minister of Minority Affairs Kiren Rijiju said that Waqf Amendment Bill aims to provide justice to the needy people. He also highlighted that this bill is not targeted to any particular community.
We must give justice to the thousands and thousands of people who have lost their rightful claim, their ownership on their particular lands. This is not related to or targeted to Muslim alone. There are some campaign going on to set a narrative that the central government is working against Muslim community. No. We are here to correct the mistakes done in the past and to provide justice to the needy people.
Now, UAE's Global Imams Council leader Mohammad Tawhidi noted that Waqf Board should be focused on serving Islam, Muslims, society and humanity should be law-abiding with a positive outlook on how religious communities can contribute positively towards creating an inclusive society.
I believe that a Waqf Board should be focused on serving Islam and Muslims and society and humanity as we have them in the UAE. Firstly, law-abiding with a positive outlook on how religious communities can operate and serve society.
Now, a recent report by India's Niti Aayog titled Automotive Industry Powering India's Participation in Global Value Chains outlines India's global value chain potential in the automotive sector, highlighting strategic pathways for global leadership. India's automotive industry is a significant contributor to the nation's manufacturing and economic growth, accounting for 7.1% of the country's GDP and 49% of the manufacturing GDP. The industry ranks fourth globally in vehicle production and employs millions, supporting critical linkages across sectors like steel, electronics and IT. The global automotive component market was valued at $2 trillion in the year 2022, with $700 billion traded across the borders. Now, India's current share in globally traded auto components is approximately 3% or 20 billion, indicating substantial scope for expansion. The Vision 2030 roadmap aims at scaling production to $145 billion, exports to $60 billion, and generate 2.2 to 2.5 million jobs. Moving on, the Indian Meteorological Department has issued a number of weather advisories for the country, highlighting a combination of severe heat waves and heavy rainfalls in different regions. From April till June 2025, the IMD predicts above normal temperature in majority parts of the country, and there will likely be severe heat waves in areas like Delhi, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and portions of Karnataka. And by the mid of April, Delhi is expected to see temperatures as high as 40 degrees Celsius, breaking previous air record as well. Meanwhile, contrasting the heatwave conditions, several states are under heavy rainfall and thunderstorm alert as well. IMD has predicted heavy rainfall in India's northeastern states of Odisha, Assam and Meghalaya for the next 4 days, which could lead to localized flooding and disruptions. And now it's time to take a look at other stories making news around the country in brief. The Enforcement Directorate on Tuesday issued second summon to businessman Robert Vadra for questioning in connection with a money laundering probe linked to the Shikhopur land dal in Haryana. Following the summons, Vadra reached the office of the probing agency. Every year on the 15th of April, Himachal Day is celebrated to mark the formation of Himachal Pradesh as a province of India. It is a day of pride and reflection for the people of the state, commemorating their rich cultural heritage, resilient spirit and the progress made since independence. Poila Baishakh, also known as Pehli Baisakhi, is the Bengali New Year, a vibrant festival celebrated across the Bengali diaspora, especially in several Indian states including West Bengal, Tripura, Jharkhand and Assam. It marks the end of the spring harvest season and the beginning of the Bengali calendar. India, a land of diverse cultures and festivals, welcomes the vibrant celebrations of Bihu, a festival that marks the Assamese New Year and the arrival of spring. Our next report takes you to Assam, where communities come alive in colour, music and joy together. Take a look.
Traditional beats echo through the air and the scent of fresh blossoms fills the atmosphere as it's time for Bihu, Assam's most cherished festival. Celebrated in mid-April, Rongali Bihu, also known as Bohag Bihu, marks the beginning of the Assamese New Year. It is a celebration of life, love, harvest and harmony with nature. People across Assam wear traditional attires, the graceful Mekhela Chador for women and Dhoti Gamcha for men, and come together to perform the iconic Bihu dance, accompanied by the rhythmic tunes of Dhol, Pepa and Gogana. Bihu celebrations are marked by grand community gatherings, cultural showcases and traditional featuring delicacies like pitha, laru and doi sira. The spirit of unity and tradition is at its peak as the festival brings together people across castes and communities to celebrate the joys of rural life, gratitude for nature and the bonds of togetherness. As Assam welcomes the new year with joy and pride, Bihu continues to stand as a symbol of resilience, cultural richness and the Assamese way of life. From rhythmic steps to heartfelt songs, Bihu encapsulates the essence of Assam's soul. Kriti Vadhera's report for DD India.
Now it's time to get you all the latest from the world of business. Now India's frontline equity indices surged in a massive bull rally in the early trade today as positive global cues improved investor sentiment. After the opening bell, the Nifty 50 was trading 467 points or 2.5% higher at 23,295.55, and the Sensex was trading 1,569.89 points or 2.09% higher at 76,727.15. All the sectoral indices traded in the green, with Nifty Auto jumping nearly 3% to lead the pack. Rupee strengthened 20 paise to open at 85.85 against the US dollar. According to market watchers, US President Donald Trump's pause on tariffs for 90 days brought cheer to the markets. And in the afternoon trade, the Sensex was up 1,614.2 points or 2.15% at 76,777.46, and the Nifty was up 499.25 points or 2.1% at 23,327.8. Asian shares edged slightly higher on Tuesday, helped by gains in auto companies after US President Donald Trump suggested he might grant exemptions on auto-related levies already in place. Japan's Nikkei rose by 1%, with shares of MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan went up 0.3%. Oil prices rose, boosted by the latest tariff exemptions floated by Donald Trump. Brent crude gained 0.2%, while US crude was up 0.24%. Gold prices remained close to record highs, trading at $3,221.45 US dollars an ounce as investors continued to seek safety amid global economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions. You're watching DD India News Hour, and now it's time to get you all the latest from the world of sports, to begin with cricket first. Shreyas Iyer's Punjab Kings will host Ajinkya Rahani's Kolkata Knight Riders in the 31st match of the ongoing Indian Premier League Season 18 in New Chandigarh on Tuesday. Now, Kolkata are placed 5th in the points table with 3 victories and as many losses to get 6 points from 6 matches, whereas Punjab Kings are 6th with equal points as Kolkata but have an inferior net as they've played 5 matches so far. Punjab are coming off an 8-wicket crushing loss against Sunrisers Hyderabad at Rajiv Gandhi Stadium. Punjab Kings bowling coach James Hope has confirmed that pacer Lockie Ferguson will be unavailable for the remainder of the season. After his departure, Asmatullah Omarzai can come back to playing 11. Meanwhile, Kolkata Knight Riders look settled with their playing 11, and the only change that they can make is by replacing Moeen Ali with Spencer Johnson if they need an extra pacer. World number 1 Magnus Carlsen clinched the Paris Freestyle Chess Grand Slam on Monday night after seeing off Hikaru Nakamura. Carlsen defeated his American opponent Nakamura in the final after winning the first game and drawing the second to claim the title without needing a tie-break. Along with the title, Carlsen also took home $200,000 first prize money, reinforcing his supremacy in this new hybrid format that combines creativity with classical rigor. Meanwhile, Fabiano Caruana edged out Vincent Keimer in the 3rd place playoff, winning the match. And with the victory, Caruana has booked his spot in the Las Vegas Grand Slam this July. In badminton, the Badminton Association of India has announced a 14-member strong Indian squad for the BWF Sudirman Cup Finals 2025, which will be played in China from the 27th of April till the 4th of May. The squad includes world champion PV Sindhu, world championships medalist Lakshya Sen, H.S. Pranoy, and the doubles combination of Satvik Sairaj, Ronki Reddy and Chirag Shetty. India qualified for the prestigious mixed team championship based on their world ranking and will be eyeing to first seal their knockout berths from a tough Group T lineup that also includes former champions Indonesia, 2-time runners-up Denmark and the formidable England. In tennis, top seed Alexander Zverev and Ben Shelton both advanced to the second round of the Munich Open on Monday following respective victories. World number 3 and 2-time former champion Zverev eased past Frenchman Alexander Mueller by 6-4, 6-1, much to the delight of his home crowd. The German lost his opener at last week's Masters to Italian Matteo Berrettino, missing the chance to bump Yannick Sinner from the world number 1 position. American Ben Shelton, meanwhile, needed to save 3 match points en route to beating Croat Borna Gojo by 4-6, 7-6 and 7-6. Shelton won both of his sets via tie-break in 2 hours and 24 minutes. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download it right now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Deepika, and from all of us here in New Delhi, thank you so much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.